InfoCredit Professional Education, empowering professionals.
Good afternoon to everybody, and thank you for attending this live webinar organized by InfoCredit Professional Education. My name is Panagiotis Marino. I'm the head of the training department. We really live in challenging times, but seems that training is always vital and important for everyone. We really appreciate your time invested, and so we hope to meet your expectations. Just some important administrative notes about the webinar. Of course, test your connection and audio prior to the start time of the lecturing. Please place your name and surname so that to ensure participation, this will help us in order to issue correctly the certificates. If you have any questions during or at the end, please add it on the Q&A box. This will be answered by order of receipt. Questions will be answered either live or during the 15-minute Q&A session upon the completion of the presentation. In case that questions are not going to be able to be addressed during the webinar, the instructor will respond after the allocated Q&A time via email. A certificate of attendance, as I said before, will be sent to your email address. This webinar is recorded and the video of the presentation will be published on the IP website. And in case you experience any technical issues, please contact info@ipn.com.cy or to the phone call already placed on the chat box. Just to introduce our today speakers and very well partners and associates. Mr. Willem Meuwissen is an expert negotiator, mediator, and litigator in commercial, corporate, and real estate law. He's permanent member of the Belgian Federal Mediation Commission and a member of the Flemish Bar Association ADR Commission. He is an expert on international commodity arbitration and is accredited as a mediator by the Belgian Federal Mediation Commission, B-Mediation, and the Association for International Arbitration. He's the author of several publications in commercial law and mediation, and he teaches negotiation and mediation as well. Melina Karaolia is partner at Emily Addison Partner LLC since 2008. Her work encompasses a diverse range of corporate and litigation matters. She advises clients in multiple commercial, civil law issues and business law disputes, corporate and commercial litigation and arbitration. Melina is a qualified arbitrator in Cyprus and member of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators in London, and she has also been trained and is currently actively interested in working with mediation. She's an accredited and registered mediator in Cyprus and has recently obtained the AMTPGA cross-border mediation certification specializing in the settlement of international commercial disputes. That's from my part now. Thank you very much, and the presentation is starting now.
Okay, good afternoon to all of you. Here from Belgium by Zoom, but glad to be present with you all in Cyprus. And I hope that we will be able, when the course goes through, not to meet by Zoom, but to meet physically in Cyprus, which is much more preferable for all concerned, especially for me, because here in Belgium it is cold and wet. So nice to have you all. And in this online webinar today, we are going to give an explanation about a negotiation course where we will be focusing on negotiation skills and on developing negotiation skills. Fundamentally, it is a course where theory and practice are being combined in an optimal way, where half of the time is being spent on theoretical models which enable you to bring under control a complex negotiation. And the second half of the time is used for exercises and for exercises in group, so that you can develop your skills yourself, and that you get acquainted with what happens in a well organized negotiation. There are several types of negotiation, and the negotiation type which is best known is the positional negotiation. This is the negotiation attitude you take by nature, by intuition. You have the you usually tend to take a position in negotiation and to defend that position as well as possible. This has been for centuries the normal way of negotiating, until somewhere in the 80s of the last century. In America, at Harvard, a new way of negotiation has been developed, which is called the principled negotiation. Principled negotiation is described for the first time in an international bestseller, which is called Getting to Yes, and which is written by a Harvard professor by the name of Roger Fisher, together with his assistant, Willem Meuwissen. It is based on that book that the technique of principled negotiation has been developed by all kinds of institutions all over the world. So that now, for professional negotiators, the use of the principled negotiation technique is the way in which professional negotiators behave at a negotiation table. Principled negotiation is actually a combination of two ways of negotiating. And the first one is the integrative negotiation. In the first part of a professional negotiation, you start by fostering value through the exchange of information, which is crucial for finding a good settlement. This is all about interests and options and solutions. We will go further on that in a few slides. The first part is the integrative part of the negotiation, and the second part is the distributive part of the negotiation. In the first part, you create value, and in the second part, based on principles, you divide the value which has been created in the first part of the negotiation. This is the general way in which a professional negotiation nowadays is being done. Before you are able to sit at a negotiation table, you are to be aware of the basics of conflict analysis, because in every negotiation, there is some conflict present. Were there not a conflict, you would not have to sit down at the table and find a settlement. So conflict analysis is actually at the bottom of every negotiation course. What you see now here in front of you is generally known as the conflict formula. The conflict formula describes the different elements of a conflict and shows in which way a professional negotiation can be done and can be analyzed. A conflict is a situation in which two or more parties have opposite interests, values, and goals. And they have these opposite interests, values, and goals in a situation of interdependence, meaning that in order to realize, to make come true their own interests, they need the cooperation of the other side, but the other side has opposed interests. So this is what is generally known as the task part of a negotiation. About this part, about the opposition of interests, values, and goals in a situation of interdependence, parties need to negotiate. But then there is a third part in the conflict analysis, and that is the E, and that is, of course, the E of emotion, because the mere knowledge that you are in a situation of opposed interests, in a situation of interdependence, fosters emotions and tends to foster negative emotions, because the first thing you experience in such a situation, that is, you are not sure anymore of the things which are in your future. You are not sure about what will happen to you because you need precisely the other side to make come true the things you are planning in your own future. So uncertainty is the first and everlasting companion of every negotiator. And uncertainty also fosters other negative emotions. You tend to get angry at the other side. You tend to look in a negative way at what will happen to you because you tend to experience or to expect the worst from the other side. So uncertainty fosters more negative emotions, and a good negotiator is to know how to deal with these negative emotions, with his own negative emotions, as well as with the negative emotions which are fostered in the other side. So this is a very important thing to be able to do. And where the opposition of interests, values, and goals in a situation of interdependence needs to be negotiated, the emotions need to be treated. So in every negotiation, you are to do two very different things at the same time. You are to reason about the ways in which you can get over your situation of opposition in interdependence, negotiating, thinking, being rational, and at the same time, you are to treat emotions. Two very difficult things, two very different things which need to be done at the same time. When we have in the negotiation course dealt with the conflict analysis, we go to the fundamentals of what a good negotiation is about. A principled negotiation is always an interest-based negotiation. You do not look for your positions, but you look for your interests. And you not only look for your own interests, but you also look at the interests of the other side. Because in some way or other, You will have to make interests of both sides meet in some way or other, because otherwise you never will find a settlement. So an analysis of your own interests and a guesstimate of the interests of the other side is the first thing you do in a negotiation. And as we will be seeing, in the preparation which you have to make for your negotiation. The second building block of a settlement are options. Options are the way in which interests may be met. How can I realize my interests? Well, the ways in which I might be doing that are called options. Here you find what is called the creative part of a negotiation. When you find as many options as possible, when you are being creative in your options, you succeed in opening a whole range of possible ways of settling your negotiation. And it is therefore in the option analysis of the negotiation that you will be able to create the most of the surplus value which you might find in your negotiation. When you have dealt in your negotiation with one interests and two options, there is a third thing you are to do. That is, you are to negotiate with your negotiation partner from options to solutions, meaning that for each interest which has been found, you are to negotiate out of the options you found, you are to negotiate one solution. And in the last part of your negotiation, you are going to look together with the other side if all the solutions which you have found for each option make together a settlement. This is the path of the modern negotiator. And of course, it takes two to tango. And when the other side does not use this negotiation technique, you are to know how to deal with that and how to bring the other side to the way in which you want to negotiate. And that is another matter which will be taught in the framework of this course. When you look at the technical complexity of a professional negotiation, you immediately realize that preparation is fundamental. An American football coach has minted the saying, failing to prepare is preparing to fail. And this is very true for every kind of negotiation. When you do not prepare your negotiation, you will end up with a settlement which is substandard for you. And when your other side is an experienced negotiator, he will manipulate you in such a way that you are even glad with the substandard result you have negotiated. So preparation is fundamental. And as a rule of thumb, preparation lasts 5 times longer than the negotiation at the table. So if you want to know, did I prepare well for this negotiation? And you are planning for a 4-hour negotiation, you can know that you prepared well when you have been preparing for 20 hours. And when you have done that, you know that you have well prepared your negotiation. So failing to prepare is preparing to fail. You also have noticed that negotiation is about the exchange of information. The exchange of information about the interests, the options, and the solutions. And parties are to do that exchange in a way which respects their strategic interests. You do not put on the table all your strategic information at the same time. You would be stupid to do that. But yet, the information exchange choreography, as we call it, needs to be done. And this choreography is being done through the asking of questions. The good negotiator asks the right questions at the right moment. So part of your preparation is to prepare the exchange of information, and therefore the way in which you are going to ask your informative questions to the other side. This is another thing we will be looking into during the course. Your preparation, and this is fundamental in every preparation of a negotiation, your preparation also involves a BATNA analysis. BATNA, the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. The word alternative here is essential. What do I have as a negotiator at this table? What do I have as alternatives if I would not reach a settlement here at this table? And I have to explore these alternatives. I have to look into these alternatives, because when I don't know my alternatives, I don't know how long I can stay or have to stay at the negotiation table. I don't know when to say yes to the other side or when to say no to the other side. So the analysis of your alternatives is a fundamental activity in the framework of the preparation of your negotiation. And here you also notice something very important. Somebody, a party who has good alternatives, is stronger at the negotiation table when he or she is negotiating with a party who has bad alternatives. So here we already see the very important notion of negotiation power. Negotiation power lays in the quality of the alternatives one has in the framework of the negotiation. And here you see how important it is to make a BATNA analysis before you even go and sit down at the negotiation table. As I already said, a good negotiation consists in an integrative part and in a distributive part. And the integrative part of negotiations is about interests and options. You share information about your interests. And of course, the sharing of information about interests is a strategic activity, because when you give too much information to the other side at the same time, you allow the other side to exploit you. This is why negotiations tend to advance at a rather slow pace, because parties are on their guard, and parties only share the strategic information necessary to find settlement on a basis of reciprocity. So in practice, I start and I give a small bit of new information, and I see that the other side reciprocates that and also offers me a small amount of new information. And I go again, and then the other side reciprocates again. And in that way, we slowly build up trust that we are moving together in the same direction. When we do not share the information about strategic issues, we will never reach an optimal settlement. The quality of the settlement will be given by the openness about their interests, which the parties have been giving to one another in the framework of the negotiation. So a negotiator has the choice either to give in a cautious way important information, strategic information, and reach an optimal settlement, or give no strategic information, but then shrinking the possibilities of settlement to things which usually are substandard. And this is what is generally known as the negotiator's dilemma. This is the dilemma which every negotiator experiences. Do I give the information? Do I create value? Or don't I give the information? But then we will both end up with a substandard settlement. It takes skill and courage to walk this path. At the table, you will bring the knowledge you have gained during your preparation, and the information exchange choreography of which I have been telling you will be done at the table. So at a table, 1, be patient. 2, be cautious, but do not be overcautious. Know that you have to advance in offering strategic information. Know also that the things you have prepared need to be adapted to the new things you hear at the negotiation table. So a good negotiator is flexible. Without flexibility, you will never reach a good result. You have to be flexible and quick-minded when you want to be a good negotiator. And you see that when you need to be flexible and when you need to be quick-minded, you need to be calm, and you need to be able to control your emotions, which tend to be negative, as we already said. So being at a negotiation table is a very challenging thing. And this is what we also will address during the course. And now we go into something different, something very important, and that is emotional intelligence. And this is Melina who is going to talk about to you. You are muted.
Thank you, Willem. So, hello from me, everybody. It's good to have you with us. You have heard Willem talk about how a good negotiator must be in a position to handle their own emotions, but also the emotions of the other side. Now, that's easier said than done, of course. And one could pose easily the question, how do we do this? How do we handle our own emotions during a difficult negotiation, perhaps, but even a negotiation that raises several issues? And most importantly, how do we handle the emotions of the other side when we're faced with them? Well, David Coleman, who is an expert in emotional intelligence, talks about 4 dimensions in this. The first being self-awareness. Now, for a person to have self-awareness, there must be an amount of accurate self-assessment, which leads to understanding of the emotions, primarily of one's own self. And eventually that will lead to having what we call self-awareness and self-management of our emotions, which leads to better self-control, transparency of emotions, adaptability to situations. It gives one the self-confidence and the self-drive for achieving goals, but it also enables them to have an understanding that allows for empathy, for acknowledging and understanding the emotions of someone else, understanding where they're coming from in any given situation. And these together bring a kind of a social awareness. So starting from a self-awareness, which is the first dimension, we move into self-management of emotions, which is a second dimension, to a social awareness, which is a third dimension, eventually leading to a relationship management. I, as a lawyer, many times were faced with many difficult situations. And I sometimes say to my colleagues that, you know, it's not the situation that is difficult. It's the human relationships and the emotions that are involved in it that make it difficult. The situation, many times, if you take away the emotions, if you take away the complications that arise from human interaction and human relationships, it usually has a simple solution or an easy way answer. But it's all the rest that make it more complicated. So the fourth dimension is very important. It is the relationship management, which allows development of oneself, of influence, of inspiration and leadership in any given situation. And of course, it gives the space for conflict management and self-improvement. So at the negotiation table, one must first be very conscious and aware of their own emotions. And especially when emotions arise during the course of the negotiation, perhaps due to something that was spoken or done, or you were surprised with at the negotiation table. If you have to be able to catch yourself in panic or being overwhelmed with the emotion before you can start any process of making a decision about what to do with it or how to manage your emotion. And perhaps the best thing to do if you do catch yourself in panic will be to shift the focus away from the situation that causes this. And you can do this either by really removing yourself from the table, asking for a short break, depending on how high the emotions are for you, or shifting the focus and asking more questions, which will also allow you to clarify the situation and perhaps even get a better understanding of what exactly it was said, and sometimes take away any misunderstandings that might be there. At the same time, you do need to make yourself the question, what am I feeling now? What is this feeling that's created within me? Is it anger? Is it disappointment? Is it a great feeling that I'm being done injustice, and that causes me to feel being deprived at any given point? To do this, you need to be able to observe yourself. And that's when we bring in the observer perspective. Essentially, we are very often habitually inclined to react and over-identify with our emotions. So we engage more in a reaction than decisive action. So if you find any emotions coming up, you need to be able to recognize them, acknowledge them, and make space for them. At the same time, you need to make space between what you're feeling and any decision that you're taking at the negotiation table. The observer perspective is essentially a kind of a little you who is a neutral observer. We usually have a little us who is very much a judge rather than an observer. You can hear yourself judging you all the time, talking about how you did things wrong and how, oh, there you go again. You let your emotions carry you away, or criticizing you all the time. There is a little voice within us all that seems to be criticizing on a constant basis. At the same time, we do need to realize that we can develop a little voice that is simply an observer. It does not criticize. It does not tell us that what we have done right or what we have done wrong, but it simply observes the situation as it is, and it can name the emotion that arises from it. When you bring your attention back to yourself and to that feeling, it really allows you the space and the control of the situation so that you can make an informed, or even if not informed, but to take decisive action rather than just react to a situation. In negotiations, we're not only called to deal with our own emotions, of course, we're very much often faced with the emotions of the other side. And as such, we may be faced many times with difficult emotions or difficult people. What would be the first thing to do in such cases? A very good advice by Willem Meuwissen that Willem mentioned before in his book, Getting Past No, was go to the balcony. And by this, he essentially means that you take yourself mentally to a place that is away from the situation that is causing you the strong emotions. So you take yourself up to a balcony, a mental balcony, where you can look down at the situation and observe it objectively, so that you can see what it is really about. Again, it is very much similar to the observer perspective that we had just talked about, and how you allow yourself the space to make a decision rather than just react to a situation. At the same time, you can do your best to understand the viewpoint of the other side. This is perhaps one of the hardest things that you may be asked to do in a negotiation. Get into the other side's view, get into their shoes and look at things from their perspective. But unless you try to understand them, you cannot create the essential space to come to an agreement. Even when you think, or you strongly believe, or you actually know that they're being rational about the point, unless you can see it from their perspective, you cannot really handle it. It's like the example of people who are fearing planes, where they have a fear of flying. I mean, you can bring them all the statistics you want about how it's not dangerous and how most people die from car accidents or any other types of accidents instead of airplane crashes. But yet, that would not be convincing information for them, and it would not take away their irrational for you fear of flying. So it's much better if you go to the place where you can understand and sympathize with them, so that you can perhaps talk to them in a different way. You can also look for ways to make them feel as if they got their way at some points. And this can be the little points in the negotiation. This can be, for example, things that for you are not the most important ones, but you can give in to the point where you allow the other side to feel that it has gotten small wins. Small wins, as Willem said before, allow a build-up of trust. They create value in the relationship that you have at the negotiation table, and make more space for an agreement. In doing so, it is also good to separate the people from the problem. In saying this, we don't mean that you actually have to like the people, but it's good to be able to separate the issues that you have at hand. For example, we separate what we call the substantive issues with any relationship issues. What are the substantive issues? Substantive issues could be the terms of the agreement, any conditions that have to be applicable to any sort of agreement that has to come between us, any dates, numbers, issues of liability. What are the relationship issues? This is the balance of emotion and reason, and how easily the communication comes between the parties. It also involves a degree of trust and reliability between the two sides. So these can complicate the situation, but they're really not part of the substantive issues that involve a negotiation or an agreement that you're called upon to decide. Willem Meuwissen have also talks about, in his book Getting to Yes, he talks a lot about this negotiation tactic called negotiation jiu-jitsu. And by this, he essentially means that when you're dealing with a difficult situation, you do your best to avoid escalation. You bring the attention back to the interests. What are the common interests here? What are the options that we have? So every time you are dealing with a difficult reaction or situation from the other side, you keep bringing the attention back to the interest and the options, so that in that way you can see mutual gain, and you can make space to make an agreement more possible. So many negotiations fail because there is a human propensity to be defensive and have a reactive behavior. This is what Willem called before the negative emotions that usually arise in the negotiations. So in essence, what we're trying to do by bringing in the emotional intelligence in this aspect is to build a working relationship with the other side, by which views can be exchanged and understanding can be reached, regardless of any disagreements. Now, our next point is about stereotypes. It's about looking beyond any stereotypes. Well, we usually like to think of ourselves as being very reasonable, approachable, and non-biased, of course, and then that we cannot be affected by any cognitive biases. Unfortunately, this all goes so down to our subconscious that sometimes is not easily identifiable. Therefore, we need to be cautious and careful about our approach to matters and put a question mark, leaving space to question even ourselves regarding certain stereotypes that we may carry or inherent biases. It is part of our psychological processes, and it is not to be considered an intentional corrupted behavior. It is rather a part of our human psychology. So by stereotype, we mean a widely held and fixed idea that may be based on society stereotypes, or even our own personal upbringing or way of thinking. There was a study that was done in a university whereby they had equal numbers of men and women, and they had divided them in groups and had them negotiate, like in a realistic work setting. They had them negotiate their salaries. In one group of equal men and women numbers, they had told them that by this exercise, we want to look at the ways that you actually negotiate. And in the other group, they told them that this is not a realistic depiction of your negotiation standards, but rather it is more in a casual setting. It was later found that women tended to act poorly when they were told that their negotiation skills are being judged, rather than when they were told that they were more in a casual setting, in which case both men and women had the same progress in the negotiations. So what is the stereotype here? Most probably the stereotype is that women tend to think themselves as being poor negotiators. So this is not a statement with which many women would disagree, but nevertheless, when it was put into a test, it came up as part of their inherent, even limited beliefs. Into our next point, we're looking into being more aware and conscious of our feelings. And at the same time, we understand how important communication is for negotiations. Effective communication is crucial to negotiation. And in essence, negotiation could be a form of interpersonal communication. So the better one can communicate, the better the chance that you will influence the other side and achieve better results. The ability to listen and ask the right questions at the right time and come across with confidence and credibility, it is an important part of the skills that one requires to be a good negotiator. In active listening, I had put you there.
Melina, you're
Sorry.
muted.
I'm sorry, what did you miss from that? I was talking about active listening and how I have the sign here of the Chinese word to listen, which is actually called ting. And it is made up of the sign that they use for the ear, the sign for the person, that being you, the eyes, what they call undivided attention, and your heart. So essentially, genuine listening involves giving undivided attention and giving out your ears, your heart, and your eyes, and so many more. At the same time, body language is equally important, not only in negotiations, but as part of our everyday communication. In a study that was done in the 50s, I'm not aware of any studies that have been done recently, but in a study that was done in the 50s, it was found that the total impact of a message is about 7% verbal, 38% vocal, and then 55% non-verbal. So that is a big percentage of how body language is important. And researchers recently have not found any results that would counteract it. So body language, being an outward reflection of a person's emotional condition, can really tell a lot about us, and we should be conscious and careful about it. Body language is an important factor in negotiations, and as most times, actions speak louder than words. I will leave you, having said that, with a say by Maya Angelou, who is an American poet. And she said that, I've learned that people will forget what you said. They will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Melina and Willem. Let's leave some time to our participants in case they wish to make some questions. While we are waiting, if you would like to expand some points of your presentation or add something.
Well, I would like to remind your participants that basically we have tried today to give an outline of some basic factors and some important factors in negotiations. Of course, the list is not exhaustive by far, and we're only meant here to give you a taste of what are the essential elements of the negotiation skills that we tend to analyze and work on during our master negotiation class. And we will really like to see you all there. Willem, would you like to add something?
unmute. Sorry, I don't have anything to add at this moment. I hope that the things we have been developing are clear, and they are the main points of what negotiation training will be about. And they are the main points which will allow you to practice negotiation at a really professional level. So if there are any questions, I am prepared to answer any of them. And well, this is, as far as I'm concerned, this is what I had to say today.
Sure. Okay. It seems that we don't have any questions. So, all right. Thank you both, Willem and Melina, for the very interesting information you have shared with us today.
It was our pleasure.
Certainly, you will have the opportunity to elaborate more on the upcoming full course that already announced on our website. And we will inform in another email our participants. Dear participants, we have now come to the end of this presentation. The video of the presentation will soon be publicly available on the InfoCredit Professional Education website, and you will be able there to view it again. A certificate of attendance will be sent to your email address after the webinar. And we really hope that we have met your expectations and that you found this webinar interesting. It is very important for us to receive any feedback regarding this webinar so that to improve ourselves. Thank you for attending the webinar, and enjoy the rest of the day, afternoon. Stay safe and healthy. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melina. Thank you, Willem.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
InfoCredit Professional Education, empowering professionals.